Welcome to part 3. We've covered the classic questions and how to operate and scale a team. Now the hardest tier, leading through change, through pressure, and through your own mistakes. 4 more questions, same format, the method, and then a full worked answer for each one. One more time the spine because it never changes. Star situation task action result plus L for learning. Own your decisions with the word I. Keep the setup short and live in the action. Let's begin. First question, how do you handle a demanding or skeptical executive? The trap is to go to one of 2 extremes. Either you avoid them or you cave on every single push. Neither earns respect. Instead, first understand their world. What are they measured on? What are they afraid of? Then lead with the headline. Bottom line up front, then the detail, and bring bad news early with options, never a surprise. And here's the secret. You build the trust in the calm times so you have it to spend when things get hard. Here's the story. The situation, a new VP joined the company over my whole org, and frankly, he did not trust my platform team. He'd been told before he even met us that we were slow and expensive. And in our very first one-on-one, he pushed hard to outsource half of our roadmap to an external vendor. For my team, this was existential. My mandate was to change his mind, but with evidence, not with defensiveness, because defensiveness would have just confirmed his fears. First, I did not get defensive, even though every instinct wanted to. Instead, I flipped it and I asked him what he was measured on, and it was simple. Cost and delivery speed that he had to report up to the board. Now I understood his actual world. Second, I led with his language. I went away and came back not with a technical defense of my team, but with a 1-page plan framed entirely in his terms. Cost and speed. I translated everything my team did into the 2 things he cared about. Third, I gave him both early wins and honest bad news. I set up a short, fortnightly update written so cleanly that he could take it straight into his board meeting. When something slipped, he heard it from me first with options. That's how you build trust with an executive. And fourth, I proved it with a bet. I committed publicly to a specific visible delivery milestone in 90 days, and we hit it. The result, the outsourcing plan was shelved. It took about 90 days to fully earn his trust. And within the year, he was actually funding more headcount for the team he'd wanted to gut. What I learned, managing up is really an act of translation. You put your work in the language of whatever your executive is measured on. Second question, tell me about a time you drove a change against resistance. The trap is the top-down mandate. You decree it, and it dies the moment you stop pushing. Instead, start with the why and a pain people already feel. People resist change, but they don't resist relief. Then pilot it with one willing team, prove it with data, and recruit a respected champion. Change spreads through peers, not decrees. And finally, make the new way the easy way. Bake it into the tooling so it sticks after you look away. Here's a concrete one. The situation, our engineering org, about 200 people, had a real testing culture problem. Test coverage was low, production incidents were high, and the 2 of them were obviously connected. And here's the kicker. 2 previous leaders had already tried a top-down, you must write tests mandate. Both had quietly failed. Everyone nodded and nothing changed. So my mandate was to actually change the culture in a place where mandates had already died twice. First, I started with the shared pain, not a rule. I pulled the data and showed clearly that our worst outages of the year traced directly back to untested code. People will argue with a policy, but nobody could argue with their own outages. Second, I did not mandate anything. I piloted it with one willing, well-respected team, and I made testing genuinely easy for them, removing the friction so they could actually succeed and become proof. Third, I recruited that team's staff engineer as a visible champion, because engineers listen to a respected peer showing real results. They do not listen to a manager's slide deck about quality. And fourth, I made the new way the easy way. We built it into the system. Continuous integration gates, automatic test scaffolding, and templates, so the path of least resistance was now the tested path. The result, coverage went from 22% to 78% in 2 quarters, test-escaped incidents dropped 60%, and because it was adopted bottom-up, it stuck long after I'd moved on. What I learned: you do not mandate a culture change. You make the right way the easy way, and you let respected peers spread it for you. Third question: tell me about a technical decision you made that was wrong. The trap is to secretly not answer it, to blame the requirements or a vendor or some unknowable circumstance. They see right through that. Instead, pick a real call that was clearly yours. Own the blast radius honestly. What did it cost? Then show how you caught it, admitted it, and course-corrected without ego. And extract the principle you now operate by, because senior engineers are judged by how fast they kill their own bad ideas, not by never having them. Here's a real one, and it's a little embarrassing, which is the point. The situation: I had just been promoted to senior manager and I was eager to make my mark, and I pushed hard to break our monolith into microservices. It was the fashionable architecture at the time, every conference talk was about it, and I championed it loudly. The problem: we were a 15-person team with none of the platform maturity, the tooling, the observability to actually run 20 separate services. So let me be honest, this was my call, I drove it, and it started actively hurting the team. First, let me own the blast radius, because minimizing it would defeat the purpose. Our velocity dropped badly, our on-call load exploded because now there were 20 things to page on, and a change that used to be one line in the monolith now had to be coordinated across 5 different services. We had made everything harder. Second, I caught it fast, and critically I said it out loud. In a team meeting, I stood up and admitted that my decision had been premature and that I'd gotten it wrong. And you know what? That actually reset the team's trust in me, rather than losing it. Third, I course-corrected without ego. This is hard because it meant undoing my own idea. We consolidated back down to a handful of well-bounded services, and we only kept the splits that genuinely earned their keep. And fourth, I changed how I make these decisions permanently. I now require that the operational maturity for a pattern exists before we adopt it, not as a thing we'll figure out later. The result: we went from 20 services back down to 5, velocity recovered within a quarter, and I walked away with a hard rule I still use. What I learned: adopt architecture for your actual scale and maturity, not for the blog posts, and when you get it wrong, kill your own bad call fast. The last question, and the heaviest: how did you lead your team through a layoff or a reorg? The trap is to go silent, hide behind an HR script, or pretend everything is fine. The team sees through all of it. Instead, absorb your own reaction privately first, then be honest and human. Say what you know, admit what you don't. Protect your people behind closed doors, and re-anchor the survivors with clarity fast. Because in a moment like that, your team remembers exactly how you treated people, and that memory long outlives the reorg. This is the heaviest story, and it's about a layoff. The situation: during a downturn, I was told in confidence that the company was cutting 20% of staff. For my team, that meant I had to lose 2 people out of 10. I had to help choose, deliver the news myself, and then hold the shaken survivors together afterward. My mandate was to handle the cut with as much humanity as possible, and then rebuild the team that remained. First, I absorbed it privately. Honestly, I was angry and I was sad, but I knew the team needed me steady, not raw and venting, so I processed my own reaction with my own manager and at home before I ever faced the team. Second, I fought for my people behind closed doors. I could not change the number, 20% was fixed, but I could influence the how and the who, and I fought hard to secure strong severance, extended benefits, and personal references for the 2 people leaving. Third, when it came time, I told the truth humanely. I delivered the news directly, in person, one-on-one. I did not hide behind an HR script. I sat in the discomfort with them, and I took every hard question honestly. And fourth, I re-anchored the survivors fast, because survivor guilt and fear are absolutely real. Within a week, I did honest one-on-ones with everyone left. I reset our priorities to match the smaller team, and I gave them a clear, lighter, achievable mission. The result, the two exits were handled with genuine dignity. We had zero further attrition, nobody else fled in fear, and the team was refocused and moving again within a week. What I learned, in hard times, people do not remember your strategy. They remember whether you were honest and whether you were humane. Let's recap part 3. When you manage up, translate your work into the metrics your executive is judged on. Drive change with pilots and champions, not mandates. When you make a wrong call, own it fast and turn it into judgment. And in the hardest moments, a layoff, a crisis, laid with honesty and humanity above everything else. Same spine every time, star plus the learning, take these and make them your own. Because the hardest moments are exactly where they find out who you really are as a leader. Thanks for watching.